Back to my YouTube channel. My name is Doug Legg, and today I'm going to be talking about the proven and scientific ways that you can deal with heartbreak. What to do when you get your heart broken. Because I know that there are a lot of people out there who are feeling rejected, they're feeling hurt, and they're heartbroken, and as a result they're carrying around a lot of emotional baggage from one relationship to the next. And it's affecting you, and it's affecting the people that you love. And so I wanted to make a video giving you the tips and the strategies that I used as I've gone through several breakups myself, but also the things that I wish that I had known as I was going through that difficult time. And so we're going to be talking about a lot of the science that goes on in your body, as well as just some of the practical ways that you can implement what we're going to talk about. And what I'll say first is that this is not a fun experience. Having your heart broken really sucks, and you're going to be on an emotional roller coaster propelled by anger and hurt and rejection and regret. But there is a healing process, and you can recover, and love is available to you, and you can believe in it again. And so that's really what I want this video to be about, helping you get back in a place where you're healthy enough to have an awesome and healthy and successful romantic relationship with whoever it is that you end up meeting. And so with that being said, I want to dive into the key concepts that I have for today. So key concept number one is going to be time heals all wounds. So this is some of the most cliche advice that we're all given, whether it's in a breakup or just when we're dealing with any kind of adversity. And although this is true, there's a very important piece of the puzzle. Part of the equation is missing, and that's because time is the avenue by which we experience life change. And life change is really what's going to create the emotional distance and gap between us and the relationship or experience that we're trying to heal from. And so we've got to make sure that we're actually changing part of our life before we're ever going to experience the healing that we want to. And so this is very scientifically sound as well. So I want to talk to you for a second about how your brain works and what's going on chemically in your body when you experience a breakup. So your brain has what's called neurotransmitters, which are chemical signals that are sent between two different neurons in your brain. And every time you think something, feel something, or do something, your brain is sending these chemical signals. And the more that you practice a behavior or think a thought or feel an emotion, the more these chemical signals are sent. Now I want you to think of these chemical signals like a road or a pathway. And the more that they're traveled, the more ingrained that they become. And your romantic relationships have all of these chemical signals associated with it. And the more intense that they are, the longer that they are, the more ingrained those pathways become. And so what you need to do is create new neural pathways. And so when I'm talking about life change, I'm actually talking about rewiring your brain and engaging in new activities. And so this can look a lot of different ways, but to give you some practical tips, maybe it means that you need to move towns or cities. It could mean that you need to take a different route to work, or drive different places, or go different places, hang out with different friends, listen to different music. It really doesn't matter what it is. You've got to change part of your life to really create new neural pathways and new neural connections inside your brain. And it's funny, an ex-girlfriend of mine actually wrote me a love letter one time, and this was a long time ago, so we were pretty young, but the love letter started by saying, "You are like a habit to me." And we laughed and joked at the time because we thought it was funny, but we didn't realize how accurate that really was. And you've probably also heard it said that love is like a drug. Well, once again, whoever coined this phrase is a lot more accurate than they probably originally realized, because it's been shown that love triggers the same reward system in our brains that a lot of drugs do, and that your brain reacts to heartbreak much like a drug addict does when he's withdrawing from addictive substances like cocaine or other opioids. So again, these love and heartbreak are very similar to drugs and addictive substances. So your body's having a physical and chemical response to love. And just like your body can develop habits and automated responses to different behaviors that you do, you can have that same thing happen with relationships. It's also been shown that your brain responds to emotional pain much like it does physical pain, and the only difference is that physical pain might subside to throbbing after a few minutes or hours, whereas emotional pain can last days, weeks, or months. And so we've got to realize that our body is actually having a response to this heartbreak, and that we've got to create this life change so that we can rewire our brains and give ourselves that time or that ability to heal. So key concept number two is going to be what you suppress you empower. And this is a concept developed by a man named Daniel Wegner, who's a researcher and scientist who created the ironic process theory, the ironic rebound theory, or also known as the white bear problem. In essence, what it says is that this is the psychological process whereby deliberate attempts to suppress certain thoughts cause them to be more likely to surface. So when you try not thinking about something or trying not to do something even, it makes you more likely to do it and think about those things. So some of the worst advice that you can be given is just don't think about it. And I know in theory, if we could do that, it would be awesome and it would work. But the more we try not to think about something, the more likely we are to think about it. The more we try not to do something, the more likely we are to do it. So with your friend saying, hey, don't drunk text your ex at 2 a.m., makes you actually more likely to drunk text them. So my recommendation is don't tell yourself not to think about things. What you need to do instead is accept those thoughts and then try to replace them with more constructive things. So surround yourself with people and environments that are going to cause you to think about things that allow you to experience more positive emotions. So big idea number 3, or key concept number 3, is going to be pick up the pieces. So when we're in these serious and committed relationships, it has a tendency to consume a lot of our time and our energy and our resources. And rightfully so. I mean, we want to give these relationships our best foot. We want to give them every opportunity possible to thrive and succeed. We want to give them all of our effort. But as a result, we have a tendency to neglect the things that are good for our mental, our physical, and our emotional health. We lose touch with these activities and behaviors. And so what I want to challenge you to do is look at your life before you got into the relationship. What'd you do with your free time? What'd you do on weekends? What were relationships? Who are you close to? And then how can you re-engage with these activities and with those people and regain parts of yourself that may have been lost inside of the relationship, because those are a big part of making you who you are. And not only is it going to help you establish a greater sense of self, it's going to boost your self-esteem, and it's going to make you more attractive to future potential partners. So with that, I want to jump into big idea number 4, which is going to be don't look back. And so I want to talk about the definition of insanity for a second. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, a lot of us live these insane lives when it comes to our romantic relationships. We break up, we get back together. We break up, we get back together. And we're wondering why we keep getting the same results. And it's because we have the same inputs. And so what I want to touch on here is that the past is the best predictor of the future unless there's some sort of intervening variable. And in this situation, that intervening variable needs to be time, needs to be room and space to practice personal growth and development. Because if we don't change anything about ourselves, then when we go back into these relationships, we're going to get the same results. And a lot of people, again, they act confused, but it's because they didn't change anything. And they get back into that relationship and then they have the exact same issues and get the same results. And so we've got to make sure that we're actually taking the time to intentionally grow so that we don't experience the same problems in our next romantic relationship. And then I want to ask you this. How many couples do you know that you admire, that you would wish to model or emulate, that whose relationship you would say is extremely successful? How many of them broke up and then got back together? And I'm not saying it's impossible, but your answer is probably very few of them, because typically speaking, that's an extremely hard thing to do. So my recommendation to you is don't look back. Keep moving on. And like Thomas Rhett says, the day you stop looking back is the day you start moving on. So key concept number 5 is going to be community. We all need a shoulder to cry on, a hand to help us up, a friend to lean on in our time of need. And a strong social support structure has actually been shown to predict our happiness in life and our quality of life. And Robert Waldinger, who's a researcher who did the longest adult study ever, showed that our relationships and how happy we are inside of our relationships did a lot to predict our longevity and quality of life. And so we know that they're important. And a strong social support structure has also been shown to reduce the drastic changes of the release in hormones like cortisol and neonepinephrine, which are both hormones associated with the stress response. And so again, having strong, healthy relationships is physically healthy for your body, but it's also healthy for your life in every sense of the word. So I want to challenge you to reinvest in the relationships that are important to you, with the close friends and family members that you may have lost touch with when you prioritized your romantic relationship. So key concept number 6, now that we're talking about health, is going to be your body. So two sub kind of concepts here are going to be prioritizing your health habits, and then feelings follow actions. So when we're talking about prioritizing your health habits, what we're really talking about is giving your body the most opportune and the most optimal response possible to this stressor in your life, because a heartbreak is really like a stressor, and so we want to make sure that we're responding in the best way possible. But that's going to require us to prioritize our sleep, our nutrition, our exercise, and our mindfulness or meditation. And so I want to recommend that you exercise at least 30 minutes a day, that you sleep 8 hours a day, that you're eating nutritious meals, and that you're doing 10 to 15 minutes of meditation where you're focusing your attention on what you want to focus it on, and practicing deep breathing and bringing your body down into a more calm and relaxed state. And again, prioritizing our health habits is really just about allowing our body to have the best chance possible to respond to this stressor, the most efficient and effective way possible. And then second sub-concept here is going to be feelings follow actions. And there's been tons of science done and numerous studies done that show that laughing and smiling trigger the release of positive hormones like serotonin and oxytocin and dopamine, and these things that we want to experience, these positive neurotransmitters and hormones that we want. And so if you can find ways to laugh or smile, put yourself around people that are uplifting and positive, then this is going to be extremely valuable to you, because again, your feelings are going to follow your actions. And then I will say that you want to act in accordance with the way that you want to feel. And this is extremely hard to do sometimes, but I'm sure that you've had a situation sometime where you didn't feel like working out, and then you went to the gym, you worked out anyway, and about halfway through the workout or a few minutes into your workout, it wasn't so bad, and you were enjoying it again. And so I just want you to realize that your feelings follow your actions, and that as you're dealing with this adversity, you need to act in accordance with the way that you want to feel, because the way you act determines the way you feel, is what I'm really trying to say. And so key concept number 7 is going to be identity. So one of the hardest parts about dealing with a breakup is feeling like we've lost part of ourselves. And this happens because we often see ourselves as one entity. We see that person as an extension of who we are. We wrap who they are into who we are. And it can be really hard when we lose them, because again, we lose part of ourselves. And so I want to challenge you to think about the things that make you an individual. What makes you unique? What makes you who you are? And re-engage with those things, and re-engage with the important roles, and decide who you want to be in each of the important roles in your life. So whether it's student, employee, husband, or I guess it's not husband, it would be son or daughter or student. Again, it really doesn't matter, but what are the important roles that you have in your life, and then what are the qualities that you want to be true about you in those roles, and how can you establish your identity in each of those roles. And so spend some time thinking about who you are and then who you want to become. And then that leads me to my recap or refresher of the key concepts, and then we'll dive into a few tips that you can use to actually implement some of this stuff. So key concept number 1 was time heals all wounds. We talked about how time is just the avenue by which we experience life change, and that we actually have to change parts of our lives so that we can create new neural connections and rewire our brain. Key concept number 2 was what you suppress, you empower. We can't try to stop thinking about something. What we need to do instead is accept them and replace those thoughts with more constructive things. Key concept number 3 was pick up the pieces. So what are the aspects of your life that were lost when you got into that relationship, and how can you prioritize them again? Because it can feel like you're just a pane of glass that got shattered on the ground, and you've lost so many aspects of yourself, and you've got to tape them all back together. But we got to figure out what those aspects are so we can begin to rebuild the sense of self. Key concept number 4 is going to be don't look back. We talked about the definition of insanity and how the past is the best predictor of the future unless there's some sort of intervening variable. And the intervening variable here needs to be personal growth and development so that you can go into your next relationship and do it right. Key concept number 5 is going to be community. Who are the people and friends and close family members that you need to reinvest in and spend time with, because that's going to be such an important factor to this healing process and to your recovery in this situation. So key concept number 6 was your body. Talked about prioritizing your health habits, and then we talked about how your feelings follow your actions. And then lastly, we talked about identity. So who are you? Who do you want to become? What are the most important roles that you play in your life? And then what do you want to be true about you in each of those roles? So what are the qualities and values that you want to hold? And so with that, I want to jump into a few tips that you can use, and then we'll wrap wrap up the video. So tip number 1 is going to be prioritize your personal growth and development. And if you're not sure what areas of your life or what categories you need to see some improvement in, then ask your close friends and family. I'm sure they'd be happy to provide some feedback, some criticism, help you get back on the right track, help you make progress, help you see some improvement. And you can break this down a lot of different ways, whether that's energy, work, and love. Maybe it's faith, family, friends, fitness, finances. Again, it really doesn't matter how you break it down, but you want to see improvement in each of those categories of life. Tip number 2 is going to be careful with music. So music can be a great tool when it comes to finding motivation and inspiration and putting ourselves in a positive mood, but it can also go the opposite direction. So, we all have those songs that we associate with our ex. We all have those times where we want to lock ourselves in our room and cry ourselves to sleep and just listen to sad songs. And we want to make sure that music isn't prolonging our healing and recovery process. And so again, be careful to the songs that you listen to, because they can further ingrain those neural pathways and connections. And then be careful to the mood of the music, because again, it's important to feel your emotions, but we want to make sure that we're not prolonging the recovery process. Tip number 3 is going to be write letters. So I forgot to mention this earlier, but if you maintain contact with your ex, it can delay the sadness recovery and it can delay the decline in love. And so we want to make sure that we're giving ourselves a period of no contact. One of the things that I found helpful is to write letters, because we all have those things that we want to say, that we want to get off our mind. We want the answers and the clarity and the closure, but sometimes we're not going to get it. And so it's important that you get those things out. And again, this can be a very cathartic experience, and it gets your emotions out on paper, but make sure you don't actually send the letters. And so that's my biggest tip here, is to write letters, but don't send them, because that can be very dangerous. But again, it's a very beneficial experience to do. Tip number 4 is going to be to write down your fears and insecurities. So I realized that a lot of the issues and the problems that I faced inside of my relationships were due to insecurities that I had with myself. And so when I got out of these relationships, I wrote down what are the things that embarrass me? What are the things that make me uncomfortable or make me scared? And then I began to check those things off the list one by one, because I found that doing so boosted my self-esteem, it boosted my self-confidence, and it allowed me to conquer those insecurities and go into my next relationship in a much more healthy place. Tip number 5 is going to be to reinvest in the important relationships, so spend time with close friends and family. Tip number 6, write down a list of the qualities that you're looking for in your next romantic partner. And I'm not telling you to make a checklist of all the things that has to be true about them, but I want you to identify the principles that they stand on, their core beliefs, their core values, identify their interests and their passions, and the things that they enjoy. And the biggest reason that I want you to do this is because creating that list, or writing that description, is going to allow you to write a description of the kind of person that you need to be to attract that kind of person into your life. And again, that's going to be extremely valuable, because it's going to help you with that identity thing that we talked about earlier. I also recommend that you write down a description of the nature of the kind of relationship that you want to be in. And so that way, when you do get into your next romantic relationship, you can evaluate if it meets your standards, if it fits the criteria that you're looking for in your next relationship. And then I will say that you should write down the lessons that you learned from your last relationship. So every relationship, it doesn't matter how it ended or whose fault it was, there are lessons that you can learn, and your time isn't wasted if you can learn lessons and take them and apply them and go into your next relationship in a better place. And so again, don't hesitate to write down, physically write down what you learned and how you're going to change, so that when you go into your next relationship, you're better prepared. Look, everybody needs validation, everybody needs support. And you're not alone in this process. There are a lot of people who have gone through breakups, and it might feel like nobody understands where you're coming from. But again, I can speak from personal experience. I can remember sitting in my car crying so hard I almost couldn't breathe. I can remember being drunk at 2 a.m., calling and texting my ex. I've been there. I've gone through probably similar experiences to what you're going through. And I know that it can take a very long time to go through it, but don't hesitate to reach out to friends, to family members, to myself, either in the comments or message me, because there are people who would love to help you and offer their advice as you go through this time. And then just realize that it is going to take time to implement some of what we talked about, and it's going to be hard. And this process is it's a tough process to go through. So I wish you the best of luck. I hope that we can connect, and again, I'd be happy to talk to you in more depth about some of what I've discussed today. So thanks so much for watching. If you haven't hit subscribe, then hit subscribe. I'm going to be posting more videos on how to optimize your life. I'm going to be addressing some of the tough questions, helping you get the clarity and direction that you need to succeed in life. And so hopefully you'll find some value in my video today and in future videos that I post. So again, thanks so much for watching. Have an awesome day.